Okay, YouTube, welcome back to another video as I just shine the light on me a little bit more. And in this video, I'm going to go through how best to go about double training days. So essentially, if you need to train twice in a day, how should you go about it and how should you not go about it? Okay, so when we look at first, where do most people struggle when it comes to sort of training in general is there's no real separation between the sessions, so they might try and do both at the same time or demanding the sessions back to back, and that's just going to lead to long-term fatigue and obviously not much progress, which is not what we want. Random scheduling as well with your sessions will lead to low quality training because of that impact on recovery and your ability not to perform where you want to perform at. Under fueling, under recovering is also going to have a massive impact on your performance, and almost treating like 2 days as a badge of honor. Loads of people I know train twice a day when they may not need to, and they'll tell everyone that, oh, look at me, I train twice a day because I'm such an animal, I'm an athlete. So, well, you're probably not, but they do have a place. Training twice in a day definitely has a place, and obviously this comes into when it makes sense. So when do double training sessions make sense? Preparing for some form of competition, whether that be a high rocks, whether that be a marathon, a triathlon. When I did my Ironman, I was doing double training days. So if you're training for an event, then you're probably going to need to do some days doubling up. Also, if you're limited weekly, so maybe if you've got a busy schedule with work or family life, social occasions, then you may look to do a double training day, which allows you another day in the week off. I utilize that myself anyway. I'd rather train twice in one day, depending on the sessions, that if it allows me to have an extra rest day, especially if you train at a high level and at high intensity. It can also be used for those who are sort of really focusing on in that peak performance stage of their periodization in terms of their programming. So this could be like a 4 to 6 weeks max, but really looking to dial things in and just take things to that next level. Or if you're someone who's got training for a while, it's something you enjoy doing, you don't mind doing it, you can recover well, then again, obviously double training sessions for that individual might make sense. Key principles when it comes to these double training days is at least sort of 6 to 8 hours between each session. Okay, so if you're going to do your first session at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're probably going to want to wait until at least midday, if not a little bit later, to do session number 2. That's going to allow you to recover. It's going to allow you to get enough fuel, enough nutrition in, enough hydration to be able to go into that second session and perform where you need to perform. You can also alternate intensity, so do one hard, one easy. So if your morning session is a really hard swim, your afternoon might be a easy bike ride or an easy run, for example. You're not doing sort of back-to-back work where it's a case of tempo work in the morning in the gym or in the pool, and then an all-out max effort test with your run later on. You want to make sure that they're one easy, one hard, and the hard one first, easier one sort of latter is how I would go about it. Also, fuel in between sessions. You want to make sure you have enough carbohydrates to obviously help replenish glycogen that you would have burned in the first session. Electrolytes for hydration purposes, because obviously you'd have sweated more often than not if you're training, and obviously just a little bit of rest as well if you can. You can also monitor recovery metrics. So if your sleep's on point, HRV, energy, mood, they're all going to be good telltale signs as to whether or not you are recovered enough or potentially are under recovering. And then you can obviously look into which one of those avenues you may look to sort of focus with. How to split your sessions. So you could do strength AM, endurance PM. If you're someone that is maybe doing more of a wanting to do your runs later on in the day when you've got a bit more energy, you've got more food in the system, etc., then you might look to do your strength work in the morning, not too taxing, and then your run endurance in the afternoon. Or you could do your endurance in the morning, which is like your easy zone 2 work, or you swim, whatever it might be, and then your strength in the afternoon. You can obviously, for the afternoon one, use caffeine as well. You can use caffeine in the morning. I would typically personally go with the session. I found when I was doing my Ironman, I would do my swim in the morning because out of both my double training days, because that was the session I wanted to really focus on the most. So normally my swim was paired with the gym session, and my swim was the main priority because it was a discipline for the Ironman. So I did that first when I had more energy, albeit I was just waking up, but it also mentally set me up really well for the day. Done my swim by 7 o'clock. I was on my way home. I felt good. Whereas if I knew I had that swim later on in the day, it'd just be in the back of my mind, like, I'll go to the pool soon, got to leave in a minute, got to book my lane, So it's up to you how you do it, but there's some examples. In terms of like an example weekly split, you could do a Monday lower body, and then a PM sort of easy afternoon run. So there'll be a little bit of fatigue in the lower body, but nothing too extreme. And then you could do on Tuesday, you could do your intervals in the morning or in the PM. I would probably argue you could do them either or. If you did them in the later on in the day, it just gives your body a little bit more time to recover. Wednesday, you could do upper body strength in the morning and then your tempo run later on. Rest on a Thursday, full body on a Friday, and then maybe some conditioning in the afternoon. Saturday would be a long run, and then Sunday would be a day of rest. Or even that Friday, if you're not wanting to do conditioning or intervals, you can just again have that as a rest afternoon of such. So it could definitely be paired. It's all going to be person dependent as to where you're at, what you're training for. If you are training for an Ironman, you will have to probably do double training days, just purely down to the fact of the amount of work that you need to do and accumulate that much capacity. That's going to be pretty tricky to do 5-6 days a week, single sessions. When we look at fuel in between our sessions, after the morning workout, we want to make sure we're getting carbohydrates in our body, protein as well, around about 20 to 40 grams of protein, about 1 to 1.2 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight, just to, again, like I say, replenish glycogen, make sure they're topped up so we can use that as energy for that later session. Hydration, 500 milliliters to a litre of fluids, have some electrolytes as well, especially if that morning session you lost a lot of sweat, then you could look to utilize electrolytes to help, obviously, with that, with the hydration and making sure that, obviously, we're not dehydrated going into the session later on. You could also have sort of like a little carb snack before your second session. So banana, some oats, bagel, banana, a bit of honey, just to keep you ticking. Even if it's like a squares bar, banana, just something fast acting, easy to digest, and you can utilize it in your session. And then after that you're going to want a high carbohydrate dinner, good bit of protein as well to help kickstart that recovery. So when we look at common mistakes, when it comes to double training day, people will treat every session as max effort. Okay, so that shouldn't be the case in your programming anyway. But what you got to think of is if you're training twice in a day, one of them is going to have to be at a lower intensity than the other. Okay, because otherwise you're just going to run into a brick wall. You're not going to progress because you're going into one ultimately fatigued. It's obviously a case of pairing easy and hard with each other in a day. So you do gym maybe in the morning, and then you do your or a moderate gym session in the morning with a bit of mobility flow, and then some hard runs in the afternoon as an example, or the evening time. Skipping rest days or deloads, so important. Rest days, 1 to 2 at least per week. That's why I like doing double training days, because it will allow me at least 2. And then deloads are obviously something we've spoken about, where it's a time where you would just pull back on training intensity and volume and look to run that maybe every sort of 6 to 8 weeks. Again, this is going to depend on your recovery markers and the metrics that you've tracked, but telltale signs of a deload are going to be low motivation, low appetite, high fatigue, drop off in energy, and that's when a deload would be something that you look to utilize. Again, another mistake is ignoring nutrition and hydration, especially between the two sessions. If you're just doing a session in the morning, come home, you have a bit of breakfast, a little bit of water, and then a few hours go by and you go straight to the gym with a coffee to do your afternoon session, you're not going to help yourself. Okay, you are going to run off fumes and not progress, which is not what you want. Then also adding volume when you don't need to. Okay, I like to try with everyone that I coach and my own training is get the most out of the least amount possible. So minimum effective volume, and then layer it up. If you start with max volume, you're only going to have to increase as your body adapts. So get the most out of the least amount possible. Earn your stripes, work your way up, and then increase volume from there. That is what I would be going with anyway. So in terms of structuring your 2 days, this is something I do cover in more detail in my new hybrid athlete blueprint course. So it's a 12-week sort of course with templates all to do with strength, endurance, recovery, nutritional protocols. There's weekly planners as well, where you could obviously look to say, right, Tuesdays I'm going to be doing a double training day because Thursdays are very busy. I take my children to football, so I need that as a rest day. So that's just as an idea. So like I said, the hybrid athlete blueprint it's going to come out on the 3rd of November, and this is going to be a course exactly like I said, all about training, strength training, endurance training, nutrition, obviously with the training styles, combining them together, recovery, deloads. There's 6 modules, there's over 30 lessons, and there's also resources with each module. So if you want to get on the early bird access offer, then you can click the link in the description, which will take you to a page where you just pop your email address in, which then notifies me that you've expressed some interest. So when I launch the course, you'll have first access to an early bird offer. It's also a founder's offer as well, because it's the first time I've launched this course. So I'm looking to get people on it and just get some feedback, so obviously I can tweak and change it, make it better as sort of things progress. So if you do want to get involved with that, like I say, you can go to the description below, pop your email in and you'll be added to the list. But apart from that, hopefully this video gave you a little bit more insight into what to do and what not to do when it comes to double training. And if we enjoyed it, give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.